Welcome to a deep dive into the world of leadership, and specifically, why so many incompetent men end up in charge. It's a question I think we've all asked ourselves at some point.
Definitely a question that's been around for a long time.
Yeah. And to help us get to the bottom of this, we're looking at this paper. It's called The Silent Tragedy of Leadership. And it's written by Edmi, an associate professor over at Universitas Prima Indonesia.
Yeah, it's a really interesting look at some of the psychology
Yeah.
and the social dynamics at play here.
Yeah, I mean, we've probably all seen this, haven't we? Where somebody gets a promotion, and it seems like it's based more on their personality than actual skill.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Edmi actually calls this the confidence illusion,
Hmm.
and he says it's a real problem.
Okay, so break it down for me. What is this confidence illusion all about?
Well, it's kind of like our brains are wired to think that someone who's confident
Mm.
must also be competent.
Oh, so it's that first impression somebody makes.
Yeah, so like in a job interview, the
Mm.
person who comes in, seems really self-assured. They make these bold claims. They often make a bigger impression than somebody who is maybe more quiet,
Yeah.
even if they have like a way better track record.
So we're kind of falling for the presentation rather than the actual substance.
Yeah, and the thing is, this isn't just like a harmless thing. It can actually have some negative consequences.
Really? How so?
Well, Edme cites all these studies that show, like overconfident CEOs,
Mm.
they're way more likely to make bad decisions, like risky mergers or acquisitions, things that end up hurting their company.
So it's almost like their confidence is working against them.
Exactly. There's one study that found that CEOs who overestimated their company's performance just by 10%, they were 60% more likely to make these risky moves, even if the data didn't support it.
Wow, that's a pretty big difference. It's like confidence can actually be a liability.
It can be, especially when it's not backed up by actual skills. Then you add another layer to this, which is what Edme calls the charisma trap.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. We've all met those people, right? Those leaders who just have that charisma.
Yeah, they're the ones who are really captivating. They can like work a room, people are just drawn to them.
Yeah, they give a great speech.
Yeah, but the problem is, charisma can be kind of a double-edged sword.
Right, because it's great if you're trying to get people excited.
Right, it can be good for motivating a team, for getting people on board with a vision.
But it can also hide a lack of substance, right?
Exactly, like a leader who is all charm but no follow-through. They can really do some damage.
Yeah, you think about all those leaders in history who were known for these amazing speeches, but their actual policies,
Oh, yeah,
not so great.
it happens all the time.
So what Edme is saying is that we have to be more careful about charisma. It's not a bad thing in itself,
Right.
but we have to look beyond that surface level
Yes.
and see if it's matched with actual competence.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got the confidence illusion, we've got the charisma trap.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we go from here?
Well, this is where Edme takes us to maybe a little bit of a darker place, which is what he calls the narcissism problem.
Uh-oh.
And this is a big one.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
What's the link between narcissism and leadership?
Where, we live in a culture where we kind of celebrate those narcissistic traits. The big pronouncements, the grandiose visions, the unwavering self-belief.
Right, that fake it till you make it mentality.
Yeah. And the problem is, those traits can be really seductive when it comes to leadership.
But I'm guessing it's not so effective in the long run.
Not really. Because, you see, for a narcissistic leader, it's all about them.
So they crave that admiration.
Exactly. They demand loyalty.
Yeah,
And they just cannot take criticism.
which creates a pretty toxic environment.
Oh, absolutely.
People are afraid to speak up.
Exactly. And they're constantly walking on eggshells.
And I bet that doesn't lead to good decisions either.
No, not at all. Because a narcissistic leader, they always put their own ego ahead of the team, ahead of the organization.
Right, so it's not about collaboration or anything like that.
No, it's about maintaining their image, maintaining their power.
So we've identified these three big issues that contribute to putting the wrong people in charge. So what can we do about it? What does Edme suggest?
Well, the first step, I think, like with most things, is awareness. We
Right.
need to recognize these biases, both in ourselves and in our organizations. Once we're aware of them, we can actually start to challenge them. We can be more critical of those really flashy presentations
Mhm.
and those, bold promises, and really dig a little bit deeper.
So it's about not getting swept up in the moment,
Right.
and actually doing your due diligence
Yeah.
and saying, okay, that sounds good, but what's their actual track record?
Exactly. And start looking for different qualities in our leaders.
Like what kinds of qualities?
Things like integrity, humility,
Yeah.
long-term vision. And this is really important. a willingness to listen and learn.
It's interesting because those aren't always the qualities that get, like, rewarded.
Right, they don't always
Yeah.
grab the headlines.
You think about leaders who are maybe more quietly effective.
Yeah,
They build really strong teams,
they get things done.
but they're not necessarily the ones who are always in the spotlight.
Exactly. Edme calls these people the unsung heroes of leadership.
I like that.
And he says we need to start recognizing them more.
So how do we do that?
Well, he has this really interesting idea.
Okay.
He says that leadership should be seen as a responsibility, not an entitlement.
Ooh, I like that. That's a really good distinction.
It kind of changes the whole perspective.
Right. It's not about, climbing the ladder
Yeah.
or personal gain. It's about serving something bigger than yourself.
Exactly.
So how does that change the way we evaluate leaders?
Well, I think it means we're not just looking for, the loudest voice in the room. We're looking for the person who demonstrates a real commitment to the well-being of the team, to the organization.
Okay, so let's say we're in a position to hire somebody or promote somebody. How can we avoid falling into these traps? What are some things we should be looking for?
Well, I think the first thing is to go beyond those superficial assessments.
Right, not just your gut feeling.
Yeah, don't just rely on first impressions. Really dig into their track record. Look for evidence that they can, build trust, foster collaboration, make good decisions.
So look for substance over style.
Exactly.
But how do you measure things like integrity or humility?
That's true. You can't always see that on a resume.
Yeah.
But I think it often shows up in more subtle ways.
Okay, how so?
Pay attention to how they talk about their past experiences.
So like in an interview.
Yeah. Do they take responsibility for their mistakes? Do they give credit to other people? Are they curious? Are they eager to learn?
So read between the lines
Right. Look for those little clues.
about their character.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to ask those behavioral questions.
Okay.
Questions that really get them to describe how they've handled difficult situations in the past.
Right, because their answers can reveal a lot
Exactly.
about their leadership style.
Hmm.
Ed Mead also makes this point about how we as a society can kind of shift the whole narrative around leadership away from like individual ambition and power and more towards things like collaboration and empathy.
Yeah. A real commitment to the common good.
Right, so it's a pretty fundamental shift
It is.
from me to we. So how do we actually make that happen?
Well, I think it starts with each of us
Yeah.
examining our own values, our own biases,
Yeah.
and being willing to challenge the status quo in our own little corner of the world.
Well, so even if we're not a CEO,
Right.
we can still have an impact.
Absolutely. Because leadership isn't limited to, those formal positions of authority.
Right, it's something we can all embody.
Yeah, in our everyday lives,
And our family.
in our communities,
Yeah,
in our workplaces.
that's a good point. It's a way of being in the world.
It is.
So it's not about the title, it's about how you show up.
And it's about recognizing that. True leadership isn't about personal gain. It's
Yeah.
about making a positive impact.
This has been so eye-opening.
It has.
I feel like we've all learned a lot.
I agree.
So as we wrap up this deep dive on leadership, it really makes me think, what does this all mean, like, for me? For you?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah, like, how do we take all of this and actually put it into practice?
I don't think there's like a simple answer. But I think there are a few things we can all kind of take away from this.
Okay, so what comes to mind first?
But for me, it's about being more careful
Yeah.
about who we choose to follow.
So, like, not just accepting anybody.
Right, like whether it's at work
Yeah.
or in our communities
Mm.
or even, in politics.
Mm.
We need to be more critical of those people who just rely on charisma or confidence.
Yeah, it's about doing your homework right, looking beyond that initial impression.
Exactly. Look at their track record. Look at their values.
Yeah, see if they can actually build trust
Yeah.
and get people to work together.
Exactly. And I think it's also about, supporting those people
Mm-hmm.
who actually demonstrate
Hmm.
those real leadership qualities.
Even if they're not the loudest ones in the room. And then I'm also thinking about our own responsibility to develop our own leadership potential.
Yeah.
Even if we don't see ourselves as like a traditional leader, we can still work on those qualities.
Absolutely.
The integrity, the humility,
Yeah.
the willingness to serve.
Right. And that might look different for everybody.
Yeah.
It might mean speaking up for what you believe in, even when it's hard,
Yeah.
or mentoring somebody, or volunteering in your community.
It's just being a better person.
Yeah, just trying to be more thoughtful, more empathetic.
Yeah, I love that. Because it's about realizing that leadership isn't a title.
Right.
It's not a position. It's really a way of being.
It is.
It's how you show up in the world.
Exactly. And it's about understanding that.
Yeah.
Real leadership. It's not about, what you get out of it.
Yeah.
It's about the impact you make.
Wow, this has been a great conversation.
It has.
I feel like I've learned a lot.
I agree.
And I hope everyone listening has too. So as you go forward, just remember, we all have the power to be a part of a better future for leadership.
It starts with each of us.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope to see you next time.